Good evening, my name is Camden and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going over just some of the books that I'm really excited for in 2022. Obviously, a lot of the books coming out in the second half of the year have not been announced yet and don't have cover reveals yet. So I'm just going to be sticking to books that are coming out from January until the end of May, and I'll be making a part 2 of this sometime around June to give you the books that are coming out in the second half of the year. I tried to organize this list by publication date, but Goodreads is not always the most accurate source for this, and sometimes the publication dates get shifted around, moved, delayed, etc. So don't take this as gospel, but I did try my best, so let me hop right into the list. So in your time, this came out a few weeks ago. In my time, this came out 4 days ago. But the first one is Salam with Love by Sarah Sharaf Beg. This book follows a Muslim main character during the month of Ramadan. She is spending Ramadan with her extended family, who she doesn't really know that much about, and she's also kind of experiencing her first love at the time. I'm really excited for this book. I think it's going to be really sweet and wholesome, so I'm excited to pick that one up. The next book on my list is A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. This follows the daughter of a serial killer as she is preparing to walk down the aisle. I guess 20 years ago, some teenage girls went missing and her father was arrested in connection with their disappearances, and now 20 years later she is seeing a lot of parallels in the events that are happening as more girls start going missing and trying to solve what is happening. This one has already been optioned for a TV show that stars Emma Stone, so sounds pretty promising if it's already, you know, gained enough notoriety to get its own television series. And that one is coming out on January 11th. The next book on my list is Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves by Meg Long. This one sounds really interesting. It follows a dog sled race in space, which is like two things that I never would have thought went together, but now that I've heard it, I'm like fascinated and I want to know more. So I'm really excited to read this one. I think that the dog sled aspect is going to be stellar. And that one comes out on January 11th as well. The next book on my list is The Accomplice by Lisa Lutz. This book follows two best friends named Owen and Luna who have been inseparable since they went to college together. But when Owen's wife is brutally killed and he is arrested in connection with her death, Luna has to kind of do some of her own investigation and kind of confront a tragedy that happened while they were in school together. And that one is coming out on January 25th. Next is The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkoff. This book follows an author who has locked herself away in an isolated cabin to focus on her latest writing project. As it turns out though, this house was actually the scene of a double homicide a few decades earlier, and she starts to realize that she's not as isolated as she might think when a child shows up on her doorstep in the middle of a snowstorm, and she begins her search for the truth regarding this murder. This book also comes out on January 25th, and I am really excited for a snowy, isolated thriller. The next book on my list is This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. The tagline of this one reads, "Clashing empires, forbidden romance, and a long-forgotten queen destined to save her people." Best-selling author Tahereh Mafi's first in an epic romantic trilogy inspired by Persian mythology. I'm really excited for this one. Tahereh Mafi is best known for the Shatter Me series, which I was not a huge fan of, but I have to admit she does write really good romance dynamics, so I'm really excited to see how her skill with writing romance plays out now that she's developed her skill a lot and written a lot of books that I actually identify with a lot more since the Shatter Me series. This Woven Kingdom comes out on February 1st. The next book is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. Ruta Sepetys is a really amazing historical fiction writer, and I'm not even really a big fan of historical fiction anymore. She does a really great job of choosing time periods and countries that are not just Europe during World War II. I feel like the historical fiction market is really oversaturated with those types of books. So while I don't pick up a lot of historical fiction, I will always pick up Ruta Sepetys. And her latest book is set in Romania in 1989 under a communist regime. And we are following our main character Christian as he is being blackmailed by the dictatorship and trying to decide what choices he has and whether he should use his abilities to try and topple the government. So I'm really, really excited for this one. This one comes out on February 1st as well. The next book on the list is one that I talked about in my 5-star predictions video. This is You Truly Assumed by Layla Sabrine. I will leave that video linked up in the card if you want to see it. This book follows a Muslim character as she is kind of coming into her own as a social justice advocate and fighting Islamophobic sentiments and assumptions, but just when she's kind of getting some wind under her sails, there are threats to dox her and release her location, so she has to decide if she's going to push forward and continue with her fight for justice or if she needs to back down and protect herself. And this one is going to be really, really good. I just feel it in my bones, you know what I mean? The next book on my list is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This is the author of The Guest List and The Hunting Party, and this new book follows a girl named Jess who has recently lost her job, and she reaches out to her brother to see if she can crash at his apartment in Paris while she gets back on her feet. But when she arrives, he is actually nowhere to be found. So she starts to try to put together the pieces of his disappearance and figure out if his neighbors have anything to do with it. And The Paris Apartment comes out on February 22nd. The next book on my list is The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This author duo has written quite a few books, and I've yet to find one that is like a 5-star for me. But there is something about their writing that always draws me in. At the opening of this book, Marissa and Matthew Bishop's marriage is falling apart, and as a last-ditch effort, they reach out to Avery Chambers, who is a therapist who claims to be able to fix any problem within 10 sessions. So desperate for help, the couple reaches out to her to see if she can save their dying marriage. But as we all know, this author duo only writes thrillers, so I'm imagining everything starts going wrong from there. I tend to really enjoy a therapy/therapist aspect in thrillers, so I'm really excited to try this one out and see if this is finally the book that I rate 5 stars from these two authors. And The Golden Couple is releasing on March 8th. The next book is A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. This book comes out on March 8th as well, and the description of this one on Goodreads says, when Margaret Welty spots the legendary Hala, the last living mythical creature, she knows the half-moon hunt will soon follow. Whoever is able to kill the Hala will earn fame and riches and unlock an ancient magical secret. If Margaret wins the hunt, it may finally bring her mother home. While Margaret is the best sharpshooter in town, only teams of 2 can register, and she needs an alchemist. Weston Winters isn't an alchemist yet. Fired from every apprenticeship he's landed, his last chance hinges on Master Welty taking him in. But when Wes arrives at Welty Manor, he finds only Margaret and her bloodhound Trouble. Margaret begrudgingly allows him to stay, but on one condition: he must join the hunt with her. Although they make an unlikely team, Wes is in awe of the girl who has endured alone on the outskirts of a town that doesn't want her, in this creaking house of ghosts and sorrow. And even though Wes disrupts every aspect of her life, Margaret is drawn to him. He, too, knows what it's like to be an outsider. As the hunt looms closer and closer and tensions rise, Margaret and Wes uncover dark magic that could be the key to winning the hunt if they survive that long. This one sounds really good. I'm really into the dark, almost like gothic fantasy aspect to it, so I'm really excited for that one to come out. Next is Lake Lore by Anna Marie McLemore. This book follows 2 non-binary characters who live near a lake that has a magical world underneath it. Anna Marie McLemore is known for writing beautiful, beautiful, lyrical, ethereal stories, and also including some great LGBTQ representation. So I'm super, super excited for this one to come out. It will be out on March 8th. Even though I am kind of on a book buying ban right now, this is definitely one of the ones that I want to pre-order. The next book is The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This is the author of The Sundown Motel and The Broken Girls. I'm just going to read the Goodreads description to you. Some of these just word themselves so perfectly that I can't even hope to replicate it, so I'm just going to read this one out to you. In 1977, Clare Lake, Oregon was shaken by the Lady Killer murders. 2 men, seemingly randomly, were murdered with the same gun, with strange notes left behind. Beth Greer was the perfect suspect, a rich, eccentric 23-year-old woman seen fleeing one of the crimes. But she was acquitted, and she retreated to the isolation of her mansion. Oregon, 2017. Shay Collins is a receptionist, but by night she runs a true crime website called The Book of Cold Cases, a passion fueled by the attempted abduction she escaped as a child. When she meets Beth by chance, Shay asks for an interview. To Shay's surprise, Beth says yes. They meet regularly at Beth's mansion, though Shay is never comfortable there. Items move when she's not looking, and she could swear she's seen a little girl outside the window. The allure of learning the truth about the case from the smart, charming Beth is too much to resist, but even as they grow closer, Shay senses something isn't right. Is she making friends with a manipulative murderer, or are there other dangers lurking in the darkness of the Greer house? Something I love about Simone St. James's books is that she always has this like unclear supernatural element to them where you're always questioning from beginning to end if it's really supernatural or if it's like all in the characters' heads. So I'm really excited for this one. It sounds like it's going to be her best one yet to me. Coming out on March 22nd, we have What We Harvest by Anne Freistad. This book follows a town that grows magical crops that people come from all over to see. But when a blight comes and destroys not only the crops but begins taking the lives of the townspeople, our main character teams up with her ex-boyfriend to try and figure out what is going on. Next is A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy Lynn. This book follows a girl who has entered herself into the royal tea brewing contest to help save her sister's life. And this book comes out on March 29th. Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May and Fran Doricott. This book follows a girl who returns to Crow Island where she was raised to settle her father's estate, but she quickly gets drawn in by her rather glamorous and mysterious neighbor who throws a lot of extravagant parties and is rumored to be a witch. One of the reviews under this novel describes it as a sapphic Great Gatsby with witches, and that just sounds like utter perfection to me, so I'm really excited to read this one. The next book on my list is A Forgery of Roses by Jessica S. Olson. This book follows a main character named Mira, who is a portrait artist with a magical gift. Her art actually alters reality. It's a talent that she hides for obvious reasons because it could very easily be used against her, but when the governor's wife figures out her gift, she blackmails Mira into trying to raise her dead son from the dead using her art. This one is obviously a fantasy novel, but it does have a strong mystery element to it as well, so I'm really excited to read this one when it comes out on March 29th. Next is She Gets the Girl by Rachel Lippincott and Allison Derrick. This writing duo is actually married in real life, which is really cool. This book is a sapphic romance, and it follows two girls who were recently broken up with as they come together to form a 5-step plan to try and get back together with their exes. Obviously, in the process, they end up falling for each other. I think this one is going to be really cute. The cover of this one looks adorable, and I hope that the skating aspect is heavily featured in this book because I think that would be super duper cute. So I'm excited to read this one. It comes out on April 5th. Next is Sophie and the Bone Song by Adrienne Tooley. This book follows a main character who has been training her whole life under her father's tutelage to take his place as a musician, but when the time comes for her to prove herself in a competition, she actually ends up being thwarted by her rival. Sophie actually suspects that this rival illegally used magic to gain an edge over her, so she sets out to try and disqualify this rival, but in the process kind of ends up falling for her. Sophie and the Bone Song will be released on April 19th. Next is Queen of Tiles by Hannah Elkaff. This book follows a girl who has entered herself into a Scrabble tournament. At the same time as she is competing in this tournament, though, she is trying to solve the mysterious death of her best friend. This book is scheduled to be released on April 19th. Then we have Netherland Bone by T. Kingfisher. This book looks like your typical ragtag team goes on a quest. Our crew for this book is made up of Mara, who was raised in a convent, a grave witch, a reluctant fairy godmother, a strapping former knight, and a chicken possessed by a demon. So this one sounds like it's going to be really fun and boisterous. I've not heard anything about this author before, but it looks like she has quite a few books that she has released, so I'm excited to check out this new series. Next is Some Mistakes Were Made by Kristen Dwyer. This book follows a friendship breakup and then reunion. I think this is a really incredible topic to be covered. It's something that I think a lot of people experience, especially in high school and then in the transition time into college, but there's not a lot of YA books that actually tackle the topic, so I'm really, really excited to see what this author does with the subject matter. And this book is being released on April 26th. Next is Book of Night by Holly Black. I didn't actually investigate too much into what this book is about. All I know is it's by Holly Black, and it is her typical like urban fantasy happening in our world type of a story, and I just added it. I don't need to know anything more. Holly Black is an author that I really, really enjoy all of her books, so I'm always just excited to read whatever she comes out with next. The next book on my list is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. 16-year-old trans boy Benji is on the run from the cult that raised him, the fundamentalist sect that unleashed Armageddon and decimated the world's population. Desperately, he searches for a place where the cult can't get their hands on him, or more importantly, on the bioweapon they infected him with. I mentioned this in last week's video, but cult books are something I want to get into in 2022, so I'm really excited for this one to come out. Next is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sagar. This book follows a recently widowed actress who escapes to her lake house to try and get away from the paparazzi. While she's there, she picks up a hobby of spying on her neighbors across the lake. This one really gives me vibes of like The Girl on the Train, but hopefully because it is Riley Sagar's hand, that one will go over better for me than Girl on the Train did. But I'm definitely picking up those vibes, if you get what I mean. So anyway, I'm really excited for this book to come out. I've never rated Riley Sagar below a 4-star, so I'm hoping this one will be good. I feel like I'm starting to forget to tell which days these books are coming out on, so this one comes out on July 7th. Okay, and the last book on my list is Our Crooked Hearts by Melissa Albert. This book has a pretty vague synopsis on Goodreads, so I couldn't get a lot out of it, but I know that it follows a mother and daughter both as teenagers, and they are kind of exploring this dark magic that was unleashed, I believe, by the mother and its effects that it's had on the family. I wasn't a huge fan of The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, but I have to admit that she writes some really beautiful, dark urban fantasy, so I'm really, really excited to read this next book and see if this one is a better fit for me. And that book is being released on May 31st. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me to the end of the video. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed it, comment if you have anything to say, subscribe so you'll be notified when I post, and I hope you guys have an amazing week.